The Arizona Territory, 1878, was a land where the desert seemed endless and the nights were colder than Evelyn Carter's heart. For 2 years, Evelyn had lived alone on a small ranch, surrounded by dry hills, scattered mesquite trees, and miles of unforgiving wilderness. At 28, she was still young, but grief had aged her in ways no mirror could show. Her husband, Daniel Carter, had been dead for nearly 2 years. Every morning, Evelyn woke before sunrise, fed the horses, checked the water barrels, and worked the land until her hands ached. She did everything herself. She had learned not to depend on anyone, especially men. Daniel's death had not been the only thing that destroyed her trust. After he died, people she had once considered friends changed. Men who had barely spoken to her before suddenly appeared at her door. Some offered to buy the ranch. Others offered marriage. One wealthy rancher named Silas Mercer had visited her more than once, telling her that a woman shouldn't live alone in such dangerous country. Evelyn knew what he really wanted: her land. Her husband's ranch covered several hundred acres of valuable grazing territory. Silas had wanted it for years. He had offered Evelyn money. She refused. Then he offered marriage. She refused again. After that, his kindness disappeared. One afternoon, Evelyn stood beside her corral, repairing a broken fence post. The sun was beginning to fall behind the red mountains when her horse suddenly became restless. Evelyn looked up. 7 riders were moving across the distant ridge. Her stomach tightened. She immediately reached for the rifle, leaning against the fence. The riders were Apache warriors. At the front rode a man who immediately caught her attention. He was tall and powerfully built, with long black hair tied into 2 braids. His skin was bronze from years beneath the desert sun, and his dark eyes were fixed on Evelyn's ranch. His name was Takoda. Evelyn didn't know that yet. She only knew one thing: he was coming toward her. She raised the rifle. "Stop right there." The riders stopped. Takoda slowly lifted one hand. "We come in peace." Evelyn laughed bitterly. "That's what every dangerous man says before trouble begins." Takoda studied her. He didn't appear angry. Instead, there was something strangely calm about him. "We do not want your land." "Then what do you want?" His eyes moved toward the eastern hills. "To warn you." Evelyn lowered the rifle only slightly. "About what?" "Men are coming." Her expression hardened. "What men?" Takoda looked directly at her. "Men who know you are alone." The words struck something deep inside her. Evelyn hated that he was right. She was alone, but she refused to let a stranger see her fear. "I can take care of myself." Takoda nodded. "I believe you." That answer surprised her. Most men told her she couldn't. They told her she needed protection. Takoda simply said he believed her. Before Evelyn could respond, a gunshot echoed across the valley. Her horse reared. Takoda turned toward the sound. His warriors immediately moved into defensive positions. Then Evelyn saw them. 3 riders appeared over the ridge. Silas Mercer was in front. Evelyn's heart sank. Silas stopped near the fence. "Carter, what do you want?" "We need to talk about your ranch." "I've already answered you." Silas smiled. "You may have answered me, but you haven't understood." Evelyn tightened her grip on the rifle. "I understand perfectly." Silas looked past her, toward Takoda. His expression changed. "You've brought Apache warriors onto your property." Evelyn glanced at Takoda. "I didn't bring anyone." Takoda spoke quietly. "We came because she is in danger." Silas laughed. "She doesn't need Apache protection." Takoda's eyes narrowed. "Then why are you here with armed men?" Silas didn't answer. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then Takoda stepped forward. "Leave." Silas's hand moved toward his gun. Evelyn immediately raised her rifle. "Don't." Silas stared at her. You think these warriors will protect you forever? Evelyn answered without hesitation. I only need them to protect me today. Silas eventually backed away, but before leaving, he gave Evelyn one final look. This isn't finished. His riders disappeared into the desert. Evelyn lowered her rifle. She expected Takoda to say something. Instead, he walked toward the broken fence. He examined the damaged post. Someone cut this. Evelyn frowned. What? Takoda pointed toward the ground. There were fresh boot prints. This wasn't an accident. Evelyn knelt beside him. The realization made her blood run cold. Someone had deliberately damaged her fence. Takoda stood. You should not sleep alone tonight. Evelyn looked at him sharply. I've slept alone for 2 years. Tonight is different. She hated the concern in his voice because some part of her wanted to believe it. Why do you care? Takoda looked at her for a long moment. Because I know what it means to lose everything. Those words silenced her. There was something behind his eyes. Pain. Loss. A history he wasn't willing to explain. Takoda turned toward his horse. Evelyn watched him prepare to leave. Wait. He looked back. She hesitated. Why did you really come? Takoda's expression softened. We saw men watching your ranch from the hills. How long? 3 days. Evelyn's heart sank. 3 days. She had been watched without knowing. Takoda mounted his horse. If they return, light a fire on the hill. Will you see it? Yes. Then he rode away with his warriors. Evelyn remained standing by the fence, long after they disappeared. She didn't understand the strange feeling inside her. Takoda frightened her. Yet somehow, his presence had made her feel safer. That frightened her even more. That night, Evelyn sat beside the window with her rifle across her knees. The house was silent. The desert outside was dark. She thought about Daniel. Before his death, she had believed people were mostly good. Afterward, she had learned better. Trust had cost her too much. She couldn't afford to make the same mistake again. But she couldn't stop thinking about the Apache warrior who had looked into her eyes and told her he believed she could protect herself. For the first time in 2 years, Evelyn wondered whether she had been wrong about one thing. Perhaps not every man wanted something from her. Perhaps there were still people who could be trusted. But she wasn't ready to find out. Not yet. The next morning, Evelyn walked toward the barn. She stopped suddenly. Fresh footprints surrounded the building. Someone had been there during the night. She followed the tracks until they disappeared near the trees. Then she saw something nailed to the barn door. A small piece of wood. 3 words had been carved into it. Sell the ranch. Evelyn's hands began to shake. She reached for her rifle. Then she looked toward the eastern mountains. Somewhere beyond those mountains was Takoda, the stranger she didn't trust, the stranger who had warned her. And for the first time, Evelyn realized something terrifying. She might need him. But needing someone was the first step toward trusting them, and Evelyn had sworn never to trust anyone again. The warning carved into Evelyn Carter's barn door remained there for 3 days. Sell the ranch. She refused to remove it, not because she wasn't afraid. She was terrified. But fear had become something Evelyn understood. It was the weakness other people expected from her, and she had learned to turn it into determination. Every morning, she checked the horses. Every afternoon, she repaired fences. Every evening, she loaded her rifle and watched the hills. But there was one thing she couldn't explain. She kept looking toward the eastern ridge, waiting for Takoda. The Apache warrior had promised nothing. He hadn't asked her to trust him. He hadn't even asked her to like him. Yet somehow, his presence had begun to feel like a quiet protection surrounding the ranch. On the 4th morning, Evelyn heard hoofbeats. She stepped outside. Takoda was approaching alone. He stopped beside the fence. You haven't slept. Evelyn frowned. How would you know? Your horse is tired. She glanced at the animal. Takoda was right. He noticed everything. I can handle myself, she said. I know. That answer irritated her. Then stop saying it like I'm helpless. Takoda looked directly into her eyes. I don't. Evelyn wasn't prepared for that. He wasn't treating her like a fragile widow. He was treating her like an equal. Takoda dismounted and walked toward the damaged fence. 3 men came last night. Evelyn's heart jumped. You saw them? Yes. Why didn't you stop them? They wanted us to follow. She stared at him. What? They are trying to draw us away from the ranch. Evelyn understood immediately. They want me alone. Takoda nodded. Exactly. He pulled a small object from his belt. Button. Evelyn recognized it immediately. Silas. Takoda nodded. He was there. Evelyn's face hardened. I knew it. Takoda looked at her. Silas wants your land. I know. He will not stop. I know that too. Takoda stepped closer. You need to leave. Evelyn shook her head. This is my home. Then we protect it. Something changed inside her. For the first time, someone wasn't telling her to surrender. He was offering to stand beside her. Over the next several weeks, Takoda and Evelyn slowly developed a strange friendship. He came often. Sometimes he brought food. Sometimes he repaired fences. Sometimes they simply sat outside and watched the sunset. He spoke little about himself, but Evelyn learned small things. Takoda loved horses. He disliked crowded towns. He had lost family members during a violent conflict years earlier, and he believed silence could sometimes say more than words. Evelyn found herself smiling around him. That frightened her. She hadn't smiled like that since Daniel died. One evening, rain suddenly swept across the desert. Evelyn struggled to secure the barn doors. Takoda appeared through the storm. He helped her fasten them. When the wind became violent, they stood inside the barn, listening to the rain strike the roof. Evelyn looked at him. Why do you keep coming back? Takoda didn't answer immediately. Then he said, Because you are always alone. She lowered her eyes. So? I don't think anyone should have to be. Tightened. She wanted to believe him, and slowly she did. That was her mistake, or so she thought. 2 days later, Evelyn rode into town. She returned shortly before sunset. As she approached the ranch, she saw someone standing near the canyon. Takoda. But he wasn't alone. Silas Mercer was standing with him. Evelyn stopped her horse. She watched. Silas handed Takoda a leather pouch. Takoda accepted it. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Her first thought was simple. I knew it. She turned her horse around and rode home without being seen. That night, Takoda arrived. Evelyn was waiting on the porch. He dismounted. You saw me. It wasn't a question. Evelyn's eyes filled with anger. I saw enough. Takoda remained silent. You took Silas's money. No. I watched him give you the pouch. It wasn't money. Then what was it? Takoda hesitated. Evelyn's expression hardened. Tell me. He looked away. I cannot. That was all it took. The walls around Evelyn's heart came crashing down. I trusted you. Takoda looked at her. I know. You don't. Her voice broke. You don't know what trust costs me. He remained silent. My husband died because I trusted men who promised they were helping him. She wiped away a tear. Then after he died, everyone came here pretending to care about me while trying to steal my land. Takoda listened. Her voice trembled. I thought you were different. Takoda took one step toward her. Evelyn stepped back. Don't. He stopped. I didn't betray you. Then prove it. Takoda couldn't. Not yet. Evelyn turned away. Leave. He stood there for several seconds. Then he quietly mounted his horse. Before riding away, he said, I will never force you to trust me. Then he disappeared into the darkness. Evelyn closed the door. She leaned against it, crying. She hated herself for caring. She hated him for making her care. The next morning, she discovered something that changed everything. Inside her barn was a leather pouch. She opened it. Inside were several official documents. They showed that Silas Mercer had been paying a corrupt land clerk to falsify property records. Evelyn's ranch was the target. There was also a note. Only 4 words were written. "Now you know why." Evelyn immediately understood. Takoda had taken the pouch from Silas. He had not accepted money. He had stolen evidence. But why hadn't he explained? Then she realized. Takoda had been trying to protect the person who had given him the documents. Someone inside Silas's organization. If Silas discovered the truth too soon, that person could be killed. Takoda had remained silent to protect them. Evelyn felt ashamed. She had accused him without giving him a chance. But before she could find Takoda, gunfire erupted outside. Silas and his men had arrived. Silas shouted, "Mrs. White, Carter, come outside." She refused. The men began firing. Windows shattered. Horses screamed. Evelyn fired back. She knew she couldn't hold them off forever. Then Apache war cries echoed across the valley. Takoda had returned. His warriors appeared along the ridge. Silas's men panicked. Takoda rode directly toward the ranch, but one gunman remained hidden behind the barn. Evelyn saw him raise his rifle. She shouted, "Takoda!" He turned. The gun fired. Takoda threw himself between Evelyn and the bullet. He fell from his horse. Evelyn screamed. Everything else disappeared. She ran toward him. Takoda. Blood covered his shoulder. He tried to stand. Evelyn dropped beside him. "Stay with me." His eyes opened. "I'm here." She pressed her hands against the wound. "Why did you do that?" Takoda looked at her. "Because you matter to me." Tears filled Evelyn's eyes. At that moment she understood something she had been refusing to admit. She didn't simply trust Takoda. She loved him, and the realization terrified her more than any gunshot ever could. Takoda survived the gunshot, but the bullet had left a deep wound in his shoulder. For several days, he remained in a small shelter, hidden among the Red Canyon walls. Evelyn refused to leave him. Every morning, she rode out to check on him. Every evening, she returned to her ranch only after making sure he had eaten and his wound had been cleaned. She told herself she was doing it because Takoda had saved her life, but deep down, she knew that wasn't the real reason. She couldn't bear the thought of losing him. One quiet morning, Evelyn sat beside Takoda while sunlight spilled through the opening of the shelter. Takoda looked at her. "You should go home," he said. Evelyn frowned. "Why?" she asked. "Your ranch needs you." "So do you," she replied. He smiled faintly. "I'm getting better," he said. "Then I'll stay until you're completely better," she said. Takoda studied her face. "You don't have to repay me," he said. "I'm not," she whispered. His expression softened. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Evelyn whispered, "I was wrong about you." Takoda looked away. "You were afraid," he said. "I accused you of betraying me." "You had reasons," she said. "I should have trusted you." Takoda slowly turned toward her. "Trust cannot be demanded," he said. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I know," she said. She looked down at her hands. "When Daniel died, I stopped believing people could be good." Takoda remained silent. "I thought everyone who came near me wanted something." Her voice trembled. "Then you came." Takoda reached for her hand. This time, he didn't stop. Evelyn let him take it. Fingers closed gently around hers. "You were different," she whispered. Takoda looked into her eyes. "So were you." Evelyn smiled through tears. "How? You were hurt, but you never became cruel." Those words broke something inside her. For years, She had thought her loneliness meant she was weak. Now she realized it had made her strong. She leaned closer. "I love you." Takoda's expression changed. For a man who rarely showed emotion, the look in his eyes said everything. "I have loved you since before you knew my name." Evelyn's heart raced. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were still learning how to trust." She squeezed his hand. "You waited. I would have waited longer." They stayed together beneath the quiet desert sky. But their happiness would be tested one final time. Silas Mercer had escaped, and he wasn't willing to lose Evelyn's ranch. 2 weeks later, Evelyn returned home to discover smoke rising from the western hills. Her barn was burning. She rode faster. By the time she reached the ranch, flames were spreading across the dry grass. Silas stood near the gate, with several armed men. Evelyn raised her rifle. "You'll never take this land." Silas smiled. "Tonight you won't have a land to defend." He ordered his men forward. Evelyn fired. One man fell, another ducked behind a wagon. Then Apache riders appeared on the ridge. Takoda was among them. Evelyn's heart leapt. He was still weak. "You shouldn't be here." Takoda smiled. "Me." She couldn't help smiling. "You're impossible." "Maybe." The Apache warriors charged down the ridge. The ranch became a battlefield. Gunshots echoed across the valley. Horses thundered through smoke. Men shouted. Evelyn fought beside Takoda. They moved together as though they had practiced for years. Silas tried to escape toward the barn. Evelyn chased him. He turned and aimed his pistol. Before he could fire, Takoda stepped between them. Silas lowered his weapon. "You should have stayed away, savage." Takoda stared at him. "You should have stayed away from her." Silas fired. Takoda moved aside. Evelyn fired at the same moment. Silas dropped his weapon. Several of his men surrendered. The local authorities arrived later that night, after witnesses from the town had brought evidence of Silas's crimes. The documents Takoda had recovered proved everything. Silas was arrested. For the first time in 2 years, Evelyn stood on her ranch without fearing that someone would take it away. The following morning, she walked through the burned barn. Much of it was destroyed, but the house remained. Takoda stood beside her. "You lost much." Evelyn looked at him. But not everything. He understood what she meant. She reached for his hand. "I spent 2 years thinking Daniel's death had taken my whole life away." Takoda waited. "I was wrong." She looked across the ranch. "It took one life from me." Then she looked at him. "But it gave me the courage to find another." Months passed. The ranch slowly recovered. Evelyn rebuilt the barn. Takoda helped repair the fences. They planted new trees near the house. Life became peaceful. Eventually, Evelyn and Takoda decided to marry. Their wedding was simple. There was no grand church, no wealthy guests, no expensive celebration, only friends, family, and the open Arizona sky. Evelyn wore an ivory dress. Takoda wore traditional Apache clothing beneath a dark frontier coat. When he stood before her, Evelyn smiled. She remembered the first day they met. She had pointed a rifle at him. Now she was giving him her hand. Takoda smiled. "You were very angry that day." "I was frightened." "I know, and I thought you were dangerous." He raised an eyebrow. "Was I?" Evelyn smiled. "Not to me." They exchanged vows beneath the sunset. Afterward, Evelyn rested her head against his chest. The desert wind moved softly around them. For years, she had believed love belonged to the past. She had believed trusting another man would only lead to another heartbreak. But Takoda had shown her something she had never understood. Trust wasn't about finding someone who would never hurt you. It was about finding someone who would never deliberately betray you. Love wasn't about forgetting the past. It was about refusing to let the past control the future. Evelyn looked toward the ranch. The burned barn was gone. A new one would rise in its place, just like her heart. She had once been a widow who believed she would spend the rest of her life alone. Now she stood beside the man she had once feared, the man she had accused, the man who had saved her, had waited patiently for her heart to heal. Takoda gently lifted her chin. "You are thinking too much." She laughed. "Maybe." "What are you thinking?" Evelyn looked into his eyes. "That I never expected to love you." Takoda smiled. "Neither did I." She rested her head against him. "But I'm glad I did." The sun disappeared behind the mountains, and as the first stars appeared above the Arizona desert, Evelyn finally understood that her story had never been about losing everything. It had been about discovering what remained after everything was taken away: her courage, her freedom, her hope, and unexpectedly, her love. The widow who had sworn never to trust again had finally found the one man she could trust with her heart. And this time, she wasn't afraid.